bill? Do you think it's appropriate that we should have our youth getting double mastectomies and being completely dismembered for gender-affirming care? Ask them those simple questions when you put it in the truth way, and they can't answer that. So I think that's going to turn a lot of voters to the other side when you just expose the truth with simple questions.
And get voters to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be able to book some of the Democrats who are in office because they know I might ask those kinds of questions. We have some Democrats who come on, and I'm grateful for it, but there are a lot who definitely won't, and so that's kind of on you guys.
Yep.
When you go to town halls, when you engage with various candidates, ask these questions. And if you can, obviously record it, because then we can actually expose what it is they truly believe when they're talking to the voter that they think they're going to convince by saying, we support abortion up until the baby's first cry, which is a position that some Democrats actually take. But they won't say it that way.
Insane.
And you know what we also need? Devin, I bet you can definitely gloat about the work that Kayleigh McEnany did as press secretary. Governor Ron DeSantis, America's governor, has an awesome press secretary, Christina Pushaw, in the Department of Health as well, Jeremy Redfern. So a reporter reached out to them and were like, hey, we need some, we're doing a story on gender-affirming care. And the press secretary for the Department of Health returns back and he goes, wait, what is gender-affirming care? Because that's a fake word. Do you mean actually double mastectomies and stuff?
It's not affirming, it's changing.
Yeah, so we need more press secretaries too that can push back and just keep getting the truth out there. It's been really effective in Florida.
We're kind of running out of time, so let's get a little bit more personal. All of you have an important role in the media. So I would like to know, starting with you, Devin, what makes you wake up early in the morning? What are you after? And what would you like to be remembered for?
Well, you know, that's a great question, because every morning I get up and I look at Truth Social and you see the difference that we're making in people's lives. For the first time, you're seeing people once again be able to express themselves. There's so many people that are on there that are like, oh, wow, I used to see you on Facebook years ago, right? And I think, and now they're back and they talk, and you see those conversations, right? They show up in my feed. And I think that's what keeps our team at Truth Social going. I mean, the president, you know, I mean, I always tell people this, the president didn't need a new company and I didn't need a new job. Like, we are specifically doing this to open the internet back up and give the American people their voices back.
Great mission.
And, you know, and I'll tell you, you know, we should take victory laps when we get them, and this is not being reported on. But this is really important. John Rich, country music singer, he came out with a song a couple weeks ago called Progress. Not one record label would carry that song. No country music stations would play the song. He launched it on Truth Social, put the video up on Rumble, and do you know that that song was #1 in the world for 2 weeks in a row?
Wow.
So it shows you that you know, we are the majority, and just imagine, you know, like once Truth Social is approved by Google, we're now in the Google Play Store, but only for pre-order. But, you know, think about once we're able to fully be out there, people can join. It's going to make a huge, huge difference. And I think with John Rich, it just proves it with his greatest hit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You guys, very quickly.
Yeah, I don't sleep, so that's part of the issue. No, I get up in the morning and I have this sick, compelling feeling to be the first person to cover an important story. And, you know, I'm lucky that I get to cover stories that I find important, and it's informed by my radio audience and my web audience. And I love that kind of freedom. So I'm the nerd who gets 1,000 documents from a public disclosure request. You're already falling asleep. But I actually go through all of it to see if there's a story here. And so if Devin ever puts in an email something he shouldn't, I'm like, ooh, I got a story. He won't do that, of course.
You know, I could talk about how I want to be remembered as my legacy as a reporter, but honestly, more than anything, I want people to see what I'm doing and hopefully be inspired and know that you're the only ones that can let yourself get canceled. I quit mainstream media, and I was the laughing stock in Florida. I had 500 followers on Facebook. You know, 2 years later, I'm over 100,000 on all my platforms now, and I have an entire team of reporters. And because I looked into the eyes of everyone, I said, no, you can't cancel me. You know, the only person I care about is God. That's the only one that I care about when it comes to my judgment of me. So
Great example.
what I did might have seemed crazy, but it's working, and your ideas, they might seem crazy at first. Someone might tell you they're crazy, but they're not. Follow your passion.
Absolutely. Well, as we just discussed, misleading information is as real as the impact it has on our lives. Unfortunately, it's threatening the most valuable things we have, our families, our freedom, and our democracy. So let's take a stand, keep fighting for the values that made this country great. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. And thank you, Cpac, for sparking the conversations that matter. Thank you.
Are struggling, yet the political discourse in Washington doesn't reflect that fact. Could this be because our national conversation is being manipulated? Leftist big tech and the liberal media dominate and regulate our public speech. Conservatives can't let the left control the next frontier of social media technology. The Liberty Metaverse challenges the liberal stranglehold on the public square. 93% of Cpac attendees agree that conservatives need to be active in the metaverse to counter the left.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Mississippi, Governor Tate Reeves.
Good morning. Good morning. When I think of Cpac, I think of conservative and I think of action. And I'm going to talk about both of those this morning. But before I start, I'd like to ask you a question. Now, in today's age, this is really, really controversial. It's a question that makes Democrats cringe when they're asked it. It's so controversial that I wouldn't be surprised if they start invoking the privilege and label me anything but a Christian for even asking it. Now, I'm also going to ask you, please don't put this on social media, because I don't want the left's keyboard warriors to come out of their parents' basements and attack y'all, okay? Y'all ready for the question? Are you proud to be an American? Now, did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? Well, I know it was difficult to hear over the applause of our fellow patriots, but I think I just heard the sound of liberal heads exploding all across our nation. And if you think that's bad, just wait and see what happens to them when they see your American First bumper sticker. Now, I believe that the Democrat Party nationally has gone so far to the left that I heard a rumor that they were looking to move the DNC headquarters to somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They've abandoned patriotism in favor of pandering, willing to do and say anything to appease their radical base and their woke Twitter followers. Why do they do this? Well, they do it to hold on to power and to curtail your rights. This includes destroying your career by simply expressing an opinion that is different from theirs, by tearing apart your family because you don't subscribe to the liberal groupthink, by intimidating our children into not asking questions in school out of fear of being dragged to the front of the class and made to feel bad about themselves. This is the Democrats' America. They've only had power for 18 months, but it's felt like 18 years. Inflation is at a 40-year high, and everybody's paying more. They can call it by whichever pronoun is their flavor of the day, but the fact remains they have driven our economy into a recession. Right. My friends, I don't need to tell you how important these elections are this year. America is at a crossroads, and we're fixing to decide which path we take. Under President Trump's leadership, our nation was a well-oiled machine. Our economy was on fire. We were respected on the world stage. We were energy independent, and our border was secure. Since then, Joe Biden has driven us toward a cliff. Now, I would say that he's fallen asleep at the wheel, but I'm pretty sure he nodded off long before he ever got in the driver's seat. The stark difference between the Republican and the Democrat parties have never been clear, and that's why a red wave is coming to America this November. On the ballot this year are your wallets and your wages, sanctuary cities and the sanctity of life, pro-cop versus cop-out. Now, I know you're all proud of the conservative work being done in your states, but give me just a minute to brag on the great state of Mississippi. In our state, we banned critical race theory, and in our state, we banned vaccine mandates. When they wanted us to lock down like California, we said, nope, we believe in freedom, and we're going to let people make the best decisions for themselves and their families. We're working with other red state governors like Texas to help secure our border by sharing tactical information and by coordinating resources through our new border strike force. In our state, we were one of the first states to say, we're going to let boys play boy sports, and we're going to let girls play girl sports. We said no to voter fraud, and we strengthened the integrity of our elections. We supported our police so they can take care of our families. We stand up for the blue in Mississippi. Now, they've said for years that Mississippi is 50th in this and 50th in that. Well, my background is in economics and finance, and I'm kind of a numbers guy. So let me give you a few numbers. Over the last 10 years, in fact, for 3 consecutive years in a row, Mississippi is number 1 in the nation for improvements in 4th grade reading results. For 3 years in a row, Mississippi is number 1 in the nation for improvements in 4th grade math results. In fact, overall in 4th grade math, Mississippi is better than the national average. In high school graduation rates, Mississippi, because of conservative education reforms, now has a high school graduation rate of 88% higher than the national average. When it comes to our economy, Mississippi's in the top 15 in the country in improvement since the pandemic. Our unemployment rate is at the lowest level in our state's history, and the most important number I can give you today is that Mississippi was #1 in the nation in leading to overturn Roe v. Wade. We believe in the sanctity of life in our state, and I don't care what it means for the political consequences of the future. I'm going to stand up for those 62 million babies that were aborted in this country wrongly since that decision was made 50 years ago. Now, our friends, President Biden keeps telling us that he's going to build back better. Frankly, I prefer he just put it back to the way he found it. But I want you to know that I'm optimistic not only about Mississippi, but I'm optimistic about the future of America. And the reason I'm optimistic is because I know this is the greatest country in the history of mankind. I know also that it took Jimmy Carter to bring us the Reagan Revolution. And it's always darkest before the dawn. But my friends, I want you to know soon it's going to be morning in America again. Thank y'all and God bless.
탈모 샴푸 머릿결은 포기해야 되나?
더나 플러스 모르나?
66가지 자연 유래 성분과 영양 성분으로 힘 있는 모발의 세정력, 머릿결, 두피 건강까지 빠짐없이 다 잡았다. 자연을 담은 탈모 샴푸 더나 플러스.
더나 플러스 탈모 샴푸 미주 출시 기념 특별 세일. 500ml 샴푸 2통과 앰플까지 89불. 가까운 판매처에서 만나세요.
잊지마! 공석 탈모엔 더 나나나.
수소수는 우리 체내의 활성산소를 줄여 항산화 및 노화 방지, 피부 미용, 독소 제거, 당뇨 및 면역력 개선 효과에 탁월합니다. 알카하이드로의 수소 알카리 이온수기는 1100ppb 이상 수소를 함유하는 대한민국 최초 수소수 생성 특허를 보유하고 있으며 알카리 이온수를 생성하는 대한민국 의료기기 인증 제품입니다. 수소수 정수기 알카하이드로 404-989-2000번 404-989-2000번.
Lost control. Big tech, hackers, and public pressure have all stolen our privacy, our security, and our independence online. From the personal things we share that become public, to the public things we post that could ruin our lives. We've been powerless until now. There's Foreshore. Foreshore is not a new social network or messaging app. It's like a remote control for the content we share, where we already share it. With Foreshore, you decide who sees what, where, when, and how. With encryption, biometrics, location, and time, all controlled right from your phone. For videos, you send a family over messaging, or posts with friends on social media, or emails and files shared at school and at work, without ever giving those platforms a copy. It's for the content you want to monetize, or the content you want to keep private. So go ahead and share what you believe in. Secure what you stand for. Control what you fight for. With just a few taps. Don't believe them when they tell you privacy is dead, you have a unique voice and the power to use it whenever and wherever you choose. And don't hide in some corner of the internet. Control what you share out in the open. Defend your rights to privacy and speech. Secure, control, and monetize what you share, where you share it. With Foreshore, the remote control for your content.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Midland over Moscow. Please welcome Executive Director of Power the Future, Daniel Turner. From New Mexico, Congresswoman Yvette Harrell. And your host, Cpac Vice Chairman Charlie Giroux.
Good morning. That's pretty good.
Not bad.
We're delighted to welcome Congresswoman Yvette Harrell from the beautiful state of New Mexico and Daniel Turner.
Yay, I have a fan club.
That's a lot of New Mexicans in one place.
That's a good thing.
And Daniel Turner, one of America's leading energy advocates, here to talk about domestic energy policy. You know, we continue to hear this harangue from the White House about the existential threat of climate change, but we don't hear very much about the real crisis, which is no energy policy. So, Congresswoman, how have we gotten to this point?
Well, we got here because of Joe Biden. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Day one, you know, he waged war on American energy, and now we're paying for it. We're paying for it at the pump. We're paying for it at the grocery store. We're paying for it with our utilities. We're paying for it with lost jobs. I mean, I could go on and on. We have an administration that doesn't understand the importance of energy independence, what it means to us globally in terms of national security, but what it means to our everyday lives. And sadly, I don't think they understand how much our lives are touched on a day-to-day basis by fossil fuels and petroleum products.
And I want to come back to both how it touches us in our daily lives and the international implications with national security. But Daniel Turner, you've been fighting for American jobs as a result of energy. Tell us why it is so vitally important that we have a robust energy development, a safe and responsible energy development here in our country.
Yeah, first of all, we have to acknowledge we do energy better than any other country in the world. We produce it more efficiently, we produce it more abundantly, we produce it cleaner. But these jobs are predominantly found in rural communities. I started Power the Future because the folks that make energy policies, unlike the great Congresswoman here, most of them don't come from rural America. They come from New York City, where I'm originally from. They come from San Francisco. They're in DC, and they have no connection with the energy community. And we are literally, from the war on coal that Barack Obama launched a decade and a half ago, when he said, when he was running for president, I'm not going to make coal illegal, but I'm going to tell you now, if you own a coal company, you're going to go bankrupt when I'm president. And they applauded him, and they patted him on the back, and they gave him awards. And we have plunged rural communities across this country into absolute poverty. The opioid crisis is biggest in rural communities. Poverty, depression, suicide. We've closed up their coal. We've taken away their keystone jobs, their fracking jobs, their pipeline jobs, and they give each other awards. And that has to stop. We're feeling the effects of it, but rural America needs champions and voices, and that's what we're trying to fight for.
And before we get into the meat and bones of all this, 10-second advertisement, tell us your website.
PowerTheFuture.com, and that's what we fight for, is rural energy American jobs, and we appreciate being here to talk about it.
So I want to swing back, because I'm from rural Pennsylvania, and I see what the development of natural gas has done there, not only in terms of jobs, but the communities that have grown as a result. If we are to reverse the trend and go back through both regulatory policy and tax policy and push that energy back, what happens, Daniel?
Prices lower across the board, because as the Congresswoman was saying, everything is made from energy. Everything transported, manufactured, everything requires inexpensive energy, and inexpensive energy is inexpensive life. Proof of that, 2019, greatest year in American history for retail, for hotels, for the restaurant industry. Why? Because oil was cheap. Gas was $1.89 a gallon, and with your excess money, you spent and you lived and you traveled and you enjoyed life. So if we make energy and we use our energy abundance to make it inexpensive, life becomes expensive. And now we talk about national security. We talk about our leverage on the world stage, and we don't send our president to Saudi Arabia to beg them to come to our aid.
And Congressman, I assume you agree that we don't sell our strategic oil reserve to China.
Why are we doing this? It makes no sense whatsoever. You know, and the reserve is for Americans. It is for a catastrophic loss, so that if we're not seeing, you know, refineries working, or if we have a hurricane or something, and now we're just sending it over to China, the Communist Party of China, by the way, who is getting American resources. And I'm so frustrated and tired of being in DC and watching this administration put the American people second. Second to Putin, second to China, second to the illegals coming across our border. I mean, Americans are the ones that are paying for these one-party policies, and especially the energy. This has such implications on the global scale, and what we should be doing in America for the American people and for our allies and friends around the world is creating our energy resources, getting our energy independence back. That is the way we show strength. That is the way that we can ensure that costs are down, that we won't find ourselves in a one situation that I think no one's talking about. I think we're going to see major food scarcity and shortages. I'm not saying food lines. I'm just saying that everything is touched by the energy market, and we now have seen less and less fields planted this spring because of the cost of fertilizers, diesel, the volatility of the market. And now, in another 6 or 8 or 10 months, what is the cost of a loaf of bread going to be? And it's not just farm to table. It's farm to feedlot. It's farm to feeding our animals that a lot of meat eaters in here, I'm quite sure. I don't think we're ready to go all tofu just yet. And so we have got to be thinking about the long-term implications of these bad policies from this administration.
Well said. I want to come back to something you alluded to a little bit earlier, because when folks think about the development of American energy, we usually think about gasoline at the pump or home heating, but you said petroleum produces an awful lot of other products. I live in Pennsylvania, where we now have the development almost completed of a cracker facility, a multi-billion-dollar project with thousands of high-paying jobs that will take the wet gas and crack out the petroleum distillates that make plastics and every other sort of product. And so ringing that facility already are all sorts of manufacturing enterprises that will be the result of that development of natural gas. Tell us why it's so vitally important when we think of the things that aren't normally thought about.
Right, and I think this is where Americans, and especially those who understand energy, can do a better job of messaging. But, you know, the left will want you to believe it's just about starting the car or turning on the heat in your home. It's not. It's about clothes, makeup, asphalt. In fact, during the height of the whole debate on the vaccines, I said, look, go get it if you want to. But when you do, thank the oil and gas industry, because every one of those syringes is touched by a fossil fuel and a petroleum product. But here's the thing. We've got to start talking about it so people understand, because number one, there's not a backup plan. I mean, what takes the place of these plastics, plexiglass, even medications that are touched by the petroleum product? And this is what I try to tell people. Everything in this room, if it disappeared right now, that was touched by a fossil fuel or a petroleum product, it'd look different. And can you imagine looking at Nancy Pelosi without access to petroleum products? It's not a good look, just saying.
All right, there's the line of the day. We're going to have to try to top that, Dan. It's going to be tough.
Exactly.
Perfect. He handed me the mic.
And I will say you were correct that every one of those syringes was touched by petroleum, but I got to tell you, not one of those syringes touched me. So.
Nothing wrong with that.
Daniel, why don't you follow up on why it's so vitally important to develop American energy in the ways that the Congresswoman just explained?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're struggling with this, the OPEC, right? We're back to the days, it's the 70s all over again. We're back to worrying about OPEC. Does OPEC have leverage over us? We asked OPEC to produce more oil. They acknowledged with 86 seconds worth of oil is what their production. So they laughed at us, right? Our president humiliated himself. But even if we removed OPEC from the situation, which this administration is trying to do, they're just putting communist China in charge. 70% of our wind and solar is manufactured in China. The rare earth elements that make them, they are in markets controlled by China. There are 30,000 children right now in the Congo who are enslaved in cobalt mines that are operated by China because we need them for our solar panels, we need them for our wind turbines. And you know what? Bono hasn't written a song about them. No one has written a video about them. We could care less that there are 30,000 slave children, according to UN numbers, but that's what it means to go green. So there are trade-offs, as the great Thomas Sowell says. There aren't solutions, there are trade-offs. And the trade-off is we are empowering China over OPEC. They are going to have leverage over us for our electricity. And what is China making all those wind and solar panels with? Coal. They can burn coal to make solar panels that we ship to America, turn our farmland into hellscapes to make electricity, and they tell us that is green. That's the green lie right there.
And
in
it's
a nutshell.
not clean coal.
No, not at all. And neither are our solar panels. Look, we need to stop the argument, stop arguing on their language. Clean is a term they came up with. Right, green is a term they came up with. When solar panels break, and the Congresswoman has lots of solar fields in her state against your better judgment, right, they are there. When they break, they leach toxic chemicals into the ground. We need tens of thousands of acres of solar farms. That is bad for the water, it's bad for habitat. Look at what wind turbines do to animal population, to bird populations. So this idea that they are somehow green is a lie because they are also made with fossil fuels. So it's just one big lie.
I'll let you follow up, Congresswoman, but I got to say, you know, the best lines of Cpac 2022 are going to be off of this panel.
A lot of energy.
And all week, folks, you know, come back and see them. Go ahead.
But he's right. I mean, this is the thing. It's the big lie because this administration would rather lie than tell the truth, and they're just trying to get people to believe it, which sadly people are. But you're right, and I wanted to speak to these wind turbines. In committee, I'm in natural resources. We're sitting there.
Thank God.
I know it. But I'm telling the across the aisle, I'm saying, look, if we're going to be honest about this green energy, then let's talk about everything from development to disposal. Because what we're doing with these crazy, wind farms and with these solar panels is we are creating a huge problem for the next generation to sort through. Because we're just too narrow-minded, or there's not an appetite to have a real conversation with transparency in this administration right now. It is go green or go home, and my message is they're going home because we're gonna win on this energy fight.
If I may, the Congresswoman is invaluable, especially next year if we take back the majority. And the Congresswoman's role will be essential because this administration has weaponized government against our industry. There's an agency called FERC, right? FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Richard Glick is the chairman. Who here voted for Richard Glick, right? Anyone? He's a bureaucrat. He's got a job to do. He has a charter that Congress wrote. And Richard Glick is saying, well, I'm not going to authorize that pipeline because I am worried about climate change. I'm not going to authorize that project. All of our permitting, you constantly hear about permitting. Oh, so much of our permitting is held up by this one guy who none of us voted for, but because he has a political agenda. And when we take back the majority, members of Congress, like the Congresswoman here, can say, you're a bureaucrat, you have a damn job to do it, and don't push your agenda on the American people and on the American energy workers. And that's essential.
He's right. And you'll hear the left say there's 9,000 permits that aren't being used. There's 9,000 permits that are sitting in Washington waiting to get approved, but it's not just the permit, it's the right-of-ways. There's a lot of involvement with this, but we have the Department of Interior from my home state who understands that oil and gas put almost half of our budget in play every year. You know what's interesting? They got record number of capital outlay, basically discretionary spending this year. it was interesting that not one person offered to give that money back to the oil and gas industry, even though they're the ones creating it, and they're trying to hamstring them and put them out of business.
Yeah, I want to come back to something you mentioned that I think is so important, and that's pipeline development, because the left has figured out that if there isn't the pipeline infrastructure in place, we're not going to be able to transport natural gas, and that's why Boston Harbor has Russian natural gas coming in, because the pipelines don't exist to take American natural gas there. I mean, it just is incredibly crazy. How has this been allowed to happen?
Yeah, and this is what's weaponizing government. This is someone like the FERC, Richard Glick, who's holding up these pipelines because of their agenda. We see this with the lending issue as well, right? We see the SEC saying we are going to score publicly held corporations differently based upon their climate model, based upon their ESG score, which, God, I'm so sick of ESG. Everything is, it's such a lie.
Tell us how you really feel.
Absurd. And we play these stupid games on their terms. But yeah, so the left is smart. I mean, it's biblical, right? They are crafty and they are sly, and they know how to remove our funding. They know how to remove our permitting. They know how to remove our infrastructure with the FERC. And then they say, well, how come you guys aren't doing your job? And then they have the gall. We were talking about this backstage. And then they have the gall to say to this industry, which I love and which I proudly work for, because I am always going to be pro-fossil fuel. This president has the gall to accuse us of being Putin puppets. He has the gall to say, you're profiteering, you're price gouging, you're shills of Vladimir Putin. How could you persecute us like this for months and months and months, and then have the gall to call us names? I've never seen an American president go after an industry like oil. And oil is American. It's like the car industry. This was started by our country. We made it great and gave it to the world. I've never seen an American president come after an industry with such hatred and venom. He speaks worse of us than he does of communist China.
So let's come back to that, because there's a political price to be paid for that. And what Joe Biden and the Democrats are doing should cost them at the ballot box this fall. I want to get back to a couple of years ago. In the 2020 election, we had a Cpac Pennsylvania. And I was honored to chair one of the panels there that day, where we had the president and CEO of CNX, one of the nation's leading developers of natural gas. Seated next to him was the business agent of one of the largest labor unions in Pennsylvania. And I thought to myself, 10 years ago, what would the possibility of them even being on the same stage be? But the great thing was they were saying exactly the same thing. And so organized labor, in many, many, many respects, has moved dramatically in our direction as a result of these crazy quilt policies of the American left. How dramatic do you see the implications of that in this year's midterm election?
I mean, its turnout is going to be essential, but one of the things about the fossil fuel industry is you cannot outsource it, right? It is here, you cannot outsource the product, and you cannot outsource the jobs, and labor has to realize that. If you represent oil, gas, coal, pipelines, fracking, machinery, maintenance, all that industry, which is roughly 18 million jobs, no matter how much the Democrats want, those jobs can't go to China or Mexico.
And they're high-paying jobs.
And they are very high-paying jobs, and those are the jobs in rural communities that sponsor little leagues, and they sponsor and they give to their churches, and they build their communities. And they don't want to learn to code. I'm from New York City. I'm always going to be proud of that. They don't want to move to New York City. They want to live in their rural, tiny town, and we're letting those towns get destroyed, and that has to stop.
It really does.
And you're on the front line.
Well, we are. Well, and I want to kind of add on to that. It's not only here at home, but I can't think of one person in this audience that would raise their hand to, yeah, let's be reliant on China for our energy needs. That is crazy. And think about it. China is building coal power plants as we sit here today. Why? Because they are not going to find themselves reliant on another nation for their energy needs, because they understand the importance of energy independence. And yet here we are. What an embarrassing situation that our president would go to Saudi Arabia hand in hand. In fact, we pinned a letter and had 70 members of Congress sign it, asking him, you know what, slow your roll. Well, we didn't say that, but that's basically what we said. Yeah. Leave the jet at home. Let's save some energy. Let's travel around the United States of America and look at the constituencies we represent and see how real American energy is made and how valuable it is to our families, our future. And the ones that are hurting the most, sadly, are the people that are on the lower income scale, the fixed incomes, and worse yet, our greatest resource ever, our kids and our grandkids. That's who we're hurting the most.
And that's who hurts the most from the energy industry, right? When we keep hearing about rolling blackouts and rolling brownouts because the electric grid can't survive because we are crippling our fossil fuel industry. And look across the states that regularly have rolling brownouts and blackouts and look at what neighborhoods they turn off. Again, in New York City last year, Mayor de Blasio, at the height of summer when they had a rough day, they turned off East New York, Brownsville. They are poor. They're predominantly African American. The Upper East Side was fine. Right? When California, when the governor there, when Newsom has to turn off, when they have to make a human decision to turn off parts of the grid, did you ever hear a Kardashian complain about a blackout? Silicon Valley, Facebook, they're fine. They're powerless, voiceless people in rural communities. They're the ones who are plunged into energy darkness when the grid can't survive. So the very people the left claims to care about, the poor, the minorities, the marginalized, they're the ones who suffer the most under these energy policies.
So let's fast forward, Congresswoman, to a much brighter day. It's January 2023. We have a new conservative Republican Congress. What are going to be the initiatives that Congress takes forward to make sure that these policies are reversed, that regulatory reform is a key, and that the robust development of American energy is at the pinnacle?
Well, you can bet on energy independence is coming to the forefront, fast and furious. I can assure you. In fact, in Congress, we are already working on policies that'll rebuild our energy independence. I mean, think about just how ludicrous this is. Day one, this president gets rid of XL Keystone Pipeline, but then lets Nord 2 go through without so much as even asking questions. The hypocrisy coming out of this administration. It's time we put Americans first. It's time we put American energy first. And you know what we'll do? We'll bring these policies and we will dare this administration to veto these bills because the American people will have spoken in November. And we know what the priority is. It is people over politics. It's making this country better than it's ever been and giving hope and prosperity to future generations. So we do have our work cut out for us, but it starts at the ballot box and it starts with talking about these things in a way that people can understand.
And when the Congresswoman goes from ranking to chair of these committees, we need to bring people like Secretary Granholm, Richard Glick from the FERC, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, right? Deb Haaland, the Secretary of the Interior, bring them before commitment and make them explain what they're doing. And if not, cut off their funding because it is absurd that these politicians are destroying our country.
Here's what's interesting. We've tried to bring Deb Haaland, Interior, and others to the forefront to have oversight hearings and even to natural resources. You know what we get? A zero. But you know who they did bring in? The 7 top executives of the 7 biggest producers in the country and tried to get them to tell the American people they would stop producing. Well, we have our priorities very, very wrong. So it is time for a change. 2024 just can't come soon enough, I can assure you.
And those policies are going to be American independence, American energy, American jobs, American national security, American thriving economy, and all the things that American energy provides us. Please join me in thanking Daniel Turner, Congresswoman Harrell for a great panel, great remarks, great wit, great wisdom. Thank you all.
Thank you.
저 안드레스 투자의 답을 드리겠습니다.
한미 애국교회 창립 2주년을 맞아 우리 가정은 물론 국가의 존립조차 위태롭게 만드는 성평등에 대한 모든 진실을 알리는 자리를 마련했습니다. 차세대를 겨냥한 정체성 혁명과 그 배후를 주제로 김태호 목사와 세라킴 사모가 평등법의 실체와 오해를 샅샅이 풀어드립니다. 행사는 8월 14일 주일 오후 3시 휴스턴 한인제일교회에서 열리며 유튜브로 생중계됩니다.
제 목소리가 혹시 잘 들리시는지 모르겠는데 시내가 시내가 와서 목소리가 잘 들릴 수가 같은데 일단 오늘 생중계는 계속 진행을 할 생각이고요. 지각 기간에 편하게 여기서 있습니다. 마이클 린드를 또 릭스파 스탠포드 상원의원들에다가 중부 시간으로 10시 55분에 연설을 시작을 하게 예정이 되어져 있는데요. 중부 시간 11시, 동부 시간으로 한 12시쯤에
Are struggling, yet the political discourse in Washington doesn't reflect that fact. Could this be because our national conversation is being manipulated, leftist big tech and the liberal media dominate and regulate our public speech? Conservatives can't let the left control the next frontier of social media technology. The Liberty Metaverse challenges the liberal stranglehold on the public square. 93% of Cpac attendees agree that conservatives need to be active in the metaverse to counter the left.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cpac board member Veronica Birkenstock.
지금은 베로니카 버kenstock의 연설 한번 들어보시도록 하겠습니다.
Good morning, Texas Cpac. Good morning. Great. Are you excited to be here? How was yesterday? How do we top that, right? Well, I think you'll be thoroughly impressed with today. We have an exciting agenda for you today and tomorrow as well. We have President Trump coming tomorrow, so I know a lot of you are waiting to hear him speak. The next guest really doesn't need an introduction. He's a good friend of ours, and I'm sure every one of you have had a My Pillow. If it's not on your bed, I'm sure you have given them as gifts. You may even have some My slippers or My sheets or My, whatever. I think he has one of everything now. And there's also a new issue. I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs in here, and I know my husband hates Amazon. And we've always been looking for a place to go purchase items that we know they're made in the U.S. and that we can support our own commerce, and especially things that are made in America. So he has now My Store. So if you all are interested in purchasing items that are made right here in the United States by American workers, go to My Store. Mike, obviously, is going to tell you a lot about what he's doing, and he's got some great things to talk about today, and especially a lot about election integrity. And he's actually leaving here today to go to Wisconsin, and he and Carrie Lake and President Trump will be there later this afternoon talking about what's going on in Wisconsin and what the important things are. But to tell you a little bit about Mike, he's a fighter, and we are in a war. And it's going to take each and every one of us. And Mike will share his story today and hopefully will motivate you to join with him and the rest of us here at Cpac as we take back our country, as we work to win back what we're fighting for, which is our freedom. And not only to win it back, but also to make sure it never happens again. So with that, because the clock tells me I have 2 minutes left, but I really want you to hear from Mike today. I want you to hear what he's been doing, and he probably is the most canceled person in the United States. Everybody's canceled him, but you know what? They're on the losing end because Mike is a fighter, and he's a winner, and he's going to win, and we've all read the last chapter, and we know what the results are going to be, and we will win in the end. And we're just in a war. It's a battle, but we win. Thank you so much for coming to Cpac, especially supporting our Texas event, and hopefully you will have a great experience, and we look forward to seeing you throughout the conference. Have a blessed day. Mike, are you back there? Mike Lindell.
Wow, thank you all, thank you. I'm going to show this, I'm going to do something a little different. I want to show you a little clip we made, and we made two of them. One of them is 3 minutes long, and it's going to tell you about an upcoming event I have that's going to change this country and the world forever. And it's August 20th and 21st, so if you can roll that first, please.
Today, I address you not only as a citizen of the United States, but as an American, standing for all humanity. For the first time in the history of our nation, technology has been activated that attacks our Constitution with a capacity to destroy our future.
Absolute proof of the biggest cyber attack in history.
We must remove voting machines and any electronic devices from all elections forever. Elections have consequences. These selections are transforming the spirit of our country.
If the election of 2020 didn't happen, we would never, ever, ever have gotten to this great place we're going to get to. Trust me on that. Ever. This was all God's plan, and we are in the greatest revival for Jesus in history.
Mike Lindell presents live the Moment of Truth Summit on frankspeech.com.
Well, we are in the greatest revival for Jesus in history, and I want to tell you, I want to compare the 2020 election will go down as the most important election in history, and here's why. I'll tell you, when I did my first infomercial on October 7, 2011, I was living in my sister's basement, and I had like 10 employees, and I did this dream of an infomercial, and we launched it that day. And 40 days later, I had 500 employees. We were the #1 infomercial in the world. Over the next 6 months, we took in $100 million. But I woke up that day, and I'm in tears. I'm going, I was $6 million in debt. And it took a couple years to dig out of that, but I just prayed. I said, God, what went wrong? What did I do wrong? But I learned so much from the spring of 2012, where the corruption was, where the mistakes were made. So much was revealed over those next 2 years, where if 2012 hadn't happened to my pillow, I wouldn't be where I'm at now with that platform God's given me for such a time we're in right now. And sold over 2,000 employees and all that part. It's the same thing as the 2020 election. Now, I'll tell you, if we would have went to bed on at 3 in the morning, if they hadn't overrode the algorithms, if our great President Donald Trump and all of you had not overrode the algorithms of the machines, just like Carrie Lake just did last night, right? That was like on the machines, hurry, we got to do something, what are we going to do? Well, they couldn't do it this time because we overrode it, okay? Just like in 2020, you think of this, if we would have went to bed and if they would have predicted right, they didn't know that Donald Trump was going to get 83 million votes, everybody. That's a fact. Biden only got about 64 million, okay? But we would have all went to bed, and Biden would have won, and we would have never known. And we would have all been around going, can you believe that what happened to our kids, our children? They brainwashed them in college, the media, everyone's going, we've turned into a communist country. That's what would have happened. But God said, no, he gave us grace. He gave us all the stuff that's from back then. Do you know I prayed on January 4th. On January 4th, when they had that runoff in Georgia, the 2 senators, I prayed that they would steal them both. And was going, Mike, you did this. No, let me tell you, if I was their marketer, I would have said, give them back a senator so they shut up about this election and this election crime. If they would have done that, everyone would have went into a mode. Maybe not all of you, but most people would have said, let's just stop. We still have the Senate. We'll get them back in 2022, red wave, and then the next time would be blue wave, red wave, all this uniparty stuff going on. But instead, they stole them both, and everyone's going, Now what do? Well, they had a backup plan. What did they do? To silence us, they had January 6th. On January 7th is very significant that we got through January 7th, and here's why. January 7th is the day they tried to silence us forever. 1.2 million Americans lost their crooked Vimeos, YouTubes, Suckerbucks, Facebook, Twitter, deplatformed, churches deplatformed, not just our great President Donald Trump. They tried to silence our voices. Conservative media, that one of them rhymes with Fox, went completely silent about the election, okay? They went silent about it. They won't talk to you about the election. They won't even talk. We have 2,000 mules on there. That has nothing to do with machines. It's disgusting, okay? But they didn't silence our voices, okay? And over the last year and a half now, here's where we're at, and here's what's going to get our country back. The judges, and everyone's going, Mike, the judges, they didn't have our back then. Let me tell you, I'll tell you who didn't have our back were all the legislatures. We've learned now the Republican legislatures in a lot of these states, they turned their back on us. We've learned we have learned so much from the 2020 election, where the horrible, we call them rhinos, I call them criminal rhinos. You go to Brad Rasmussen down in Georgia, it's disgusting what he's done. Okay, and there's a blocker in every state. Well, Rusty Bowers is gone, everybody. How about that? You got the blocker Robin Voss up in Wisconsin. The president just endorsed his opponent. God bless him, because Robin Voss needs to go. Okay, these are things that are going to happen. But I want to tell you about the judges. You go back a year and a half ago, and those judges, not one judge looked at evidence. Not one. Actually, I take it back. In Antrim County, Michigan, the judge did look there. If you all heard that on the news, he looked, but he didn't rule on it. He said, I don't want to be the first guy to be able to talk about this. The judges had fear back then. They have families too. They're like all of us. They have friends, family, children, grandchildren. We were in an anomaly back then. We're still in an anomaly in history. But now it's different. They've all learned so much. They've, people that were over here are now in the middle because they see how our country's being destroyed. This isn't a Democrat thing. The Democratic Party dislikes that they were picked in this fraud election. We skipped right over socialism to communism is where we're at. But these judges now are getting braver. Look at the judge in Florida that made the great ruling and said the masks are nonsense on airplanes and no mandates, right? That changed history. Look at Roe v. Wade right in the middle of all this. What a miracle, right? We have a judge. Here's another thing with Kari Lake. Kari, we're doing preliminary injunctions to get rid of the machines in all these states. We started with Arizona 2 weeks ago. You're not going to see this on Fox News. You need to go to Frank's speech. You need to go to my platform. You're going to hear it. That's why I built it, so we could get the word out. But this judge in Arizona agreed to look at the case, and he was an Obama-appointed judge. He's just doing his job as a judge. I got terrible ones out in D.C. One of them was Trump appointed with the big fight of the machines there. But this judge looked at it, and I want you to think of this. This judge looked at this. It was a hearing 2 weeks ago. Looks at all the evidence of these machines, and the relief is to get rid of them and do paper ballots and hand count it. Okay. He looked at it. Now compare it to this. If I told you, if I'm in the state of Arizona, or let's say I'm here in Texas, and I said, hey, do you know we have reason to believe that all your cars don't have brakes? And then finally you get a judge to look at it, and he goes, ooh, that's not good. And then he's got to make a ruling of why you should either still drive on these cars with no brakes or get rid of them. So that judge, but he's looking at whatever he rules, either way is a win. He looked at it, everybody. And judge after judge is going to start looking at this stuff. There's stuff going on in every state right now. And I want to tell you, the way we're at right now, I am having what you've seen in there. I deal with all 50 states. We have a call once a week, millions of people from around this country that have been fighting in the grassroots and lawsuits, there's stuff. Every state I get on the call, they say, we had the most fraud in our state. We had the most fraud in our state. So what we're doing, it's the Moment of Truth Summit, August 20th and 21st. I'm telling you, if you get everyone, it's going to be live streamed on Frank's Speech. Get the app now if you don't have it. It'll be live streamed there to the world. At the Cyber Symposium, I had about 3-4 million people. This, I need at least 100 million people to watch. It doesn't fail if people watch. I'm telling you, all the pieces are there. I need one prayer that millions and millions can watch this. We're going to have all 50 states on stage the first day, and it's invite only, by the way, for that part. But all 50 states are going to get on there in alphabetical order and say what their current footprint is. Okay, on that day. Then that night we're showing Selection Code. It's a movie by Lara Logan. That's a world premiere. I'm giving it away free to the world. This is a full feature film that could make millions in the box office. I want the world to be saved and get it out there. So that, and then the next day we're having the Trial of the Machines. Nice name, right? Trial of the Machines. And they don't get to come, just kind of like that big charade out there, the January 6th garbage. Okay? By the way, if January 6th, I said, I'll come and show you the evidence. They won't let me come. You know, I've offered, come on, I'd love to be there, Pelosi, to tell you what a charade this is. You guys all know the FBI ruled that there was a year ago on June 26th, that there was no collusion with Donald Trump or his backers. It should have been over then, it's a joke. But anyway, there's another thing I want to tell you. The last thing I want to say is at that event, we're going to have people up on stage from other countries. And this is very important you hear me on this. Over 54 countries have now been taken by the machines or are getting taken by the machines. And you never get to go back. Venezuela, Australia, they're gone. You don't get to vote out the machines once they're there. Once they're there, you don't get your country back. God gave us grace, and he gave us, this is the one time in history, this is the best time to be alive, because history is going to look back and say, every one of you have taken a part of this to save our country and get rid of these machines before we're gone forever. Because like Ronald Reagan said, if the lights go out here, they go out everywhere. The whole world is watching. We can't, if we don't get rid of them by the fall, all of them, everybody's going to go vote these great candidates like Carrie Lake and override the machines, and we're going to get rid of them eventually, all of them. And I'll end this with this. God's given us grace for such a time as this, so we have to make this the greatest revival for Jesus Christ in history. Thank you all. God bless you.
절세의 지혜를 나눠드립니다. 이상 회계법인.
고객과 직원을 지켜주는 스니즈가드. 지금 주문하세요. 배너앤프린트.
한 곳에서 시작되는 안정된 미래. 선우앤선우 종합보험.
깨끗한 물로 샤워하세요. 알카 하이드로 정수 필터 샤워기.
팬데믹 위기 속에서 인터넷 서비스 기업으로 성장한 배너앤프린트.com.
각종 인쇄물, 배너, 스티커, 간판, 스니즈 가드까지 필요하신 모든 작업을 두고두고 마음에 드시게 해드립니다. bannerandprint.com.
전국 어디서든 웹사이트로 주문하시면 원하시는 디자인을 빠르게 출력해 신속하게 배송해 드립니다. bannerandprint.com 678-274-7275.
안녕하세요. 이상회계법인의 이상엽입니다. 30년 동안 아틀란타 한인사회에 봉사한 역사와 경험을 바탕으로 여러분들의 세무 회계 관리와 재정 은퇴 계획을 상담해드리고 있습니다. 부자 되세요.
우리 한인들의 정체는 무엇입니까? 우리가 자손들과 살아갈 땅임에도 불구하고 언젠가는 떠날 방문객처럼 살지는 않습니까?
우리는 이방인이 아닌 이 땅의 주인이 되어야 합니다.
우리는 반드시 이 나라에서 좋은 평판을 만들어야 되는데 이 나라와 우리 이웃과 우리 지역에서 도움이 되는 사람들로 부각이 되어야 됩니다.
좋은 이웃되기 운동이 여러분 곁에서 함께합니다.
It's a Marxist organization.
We will burn down this system and replace it, all right?
They do all have one thing in common, and that is an internet mob mentality.
Troubling allegations. Fired after accusations of racism at modern-day Richmond.
Another challenge to free speech. They'll harass you, they'll vilify you.
Cancel culture is real, and it's coming to a neighborhood near you.
You will lose your job. You'll be kicked out of the store. You won't have your place in society. They want you to be quiet.
What's been shocking to watch is that the press, they're part of cancel culture.
The New York Times fired their editor because he dared to run an op-ed from a Republican senator.
Free speech is unhelpful to them.
I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Calling parents domestic terrorists.
If we take over these school boards, we can combat the ridiculousness and the racist aspects of critical race theory. They canceled the President of the United States when it was my father.
We've got terrorist groups like the Taliban, and they have a Twitter account, but an American president does not.
This week, Twitter and Facebook under fire.
Mr. Dorsey, who the hell elected you and put you in charge of what the media are allowed to report?
We cannot sit back. We've watched in history this happen before. This is where we've got to stand up and not allow this to go on.
This is the fight that we were put on this earth to make.
The culture killers. Even this conversation you're having with me right now on Twitter would be banned. I mean, this is like beyond Orwell now.
Ladies and gentlemen, up next, BLM HOA. Please welcome author Diehl Hudson, director of The Culture Killers, Jason Killian Meath, and your host, Cpac chairman, Matt Schlapp.
All right, guys, we could have a late arrival. Mercedes has been on Fox News, and she's running to the, so she might join us here, which will make it much better. Perfect. All right, Diehl, take it away.
So, I am very excited to be here with my co-author, Matt Schlapp. What inspired this particular gathering was our book, The Desecrators, which we hope all of you own, and which the importance of that book is simple. It names the enemy. the enemy is those who want to desecrate all we believe in, how we understand the world, that God created man and woman, and God created laws, God created an understanding of the human person that does not allow unjustified harm to come to that person, especially abortion. And out of this book, our friend Jason here has created a magnificent film, which is fantastic, except for one thing: I'm not in it. How'd that happen? But Jason, tell us how you connected our book to your film.
Well, first of all, the book is fantastic, and that really was the beginning of the idea to create the film. The book goes in and really just slays the people that are behind this movement of cancel culture. And we wanted to craft a film that brought the book's message to even a greater number of people. And we shot the film for about a year and a half at Cpacs. We would get many of the people that were on the Cpac main stage to talk to us about what exactly is going on. And I'm talking about all the things that you hit in the book: school boards, getting kicked off of your team, or if you're a coach and you have the wrong opinion about genders, if you're a school teacher who happens to be a religious person, you get fired by the school, you get run out of your company if you have the wrong opinion by the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer of your woke corporation. It goes on and on and on, and these people will never, ever stop. They will not be satisfied with a pound of flesh until they devour you whole. So that's what we're up against in terms of this fight.
I want to ask Matt Schlapp a question. How did you like working with me on that book?
I know it looks like Deal and I are the same age, but we're not. Deal has always been not only a great friend, but a mentor, someone who's really helped me in my life and my career. He's part of the story of Mercy and I meeting each other at one of your wonderful Catholic dinners, soirees, that used to be there was a time when it wasn't the swamp. There was a time when it was much more of a southern city, and there was some decency. And by the way, if you're worried that that's gone, you're right. It's completely gone. It's pretty nasty and toxic environment. And so Deal actually came to me with Tan Books and said, hey, we've been following your story, and I think some of you know that there was a little bit of a persecution. Have you ever felt it? That comes along with supporting Donald Trump, or taking on your old Republican friends, or taking on the things in society that are evil that too many people are complicit in. And if you stand up against it, I'm not trying to be self-congratulatory or adulatory, but you all have felt it. You lose your job, you lose your friends, they don't invite you to any dinners and all that stuff. And so Deal said, why don't you tell the story? And every single person who worked for me at Cpac told Deal, you're wasting your time. Yes. Matt will never get it done. Right. And because they know I'm busy, and they know that I always feel like people who write books about themselves are egotistical. Sorry, I know some of them have been on the stage, but and I didn't mean any of them, but Deal helped keep me on task, and I'll say, oh, she's here? All right, good.
Oh, wow. I get the panel standing up. Hello, guys. I didn't mean to interrupt. We had just finished Fox, so I just wanted to make sure I can join the conversation. Deal, I'll sit there. No, you stay. You stay.
Do you mind if I finish the story real quick?
I don't know. It was getting pretty long shot. I'm not sure. And you said egotistical. I don't know who you're talking about.
Typical, I thought people were cheering for me, but they weren't. But so basically, what the book was, and I think Mercy's a part of this too, because Mercy and Deal and you and I had so many of these conversations. We'd sit on our front porch. We were kind of sad about America, and I'll get a little emotional, but I couldn't believe what was happening to my country, and I couldn't believe what was happening to all these good people, and I just was in shock. And then I realized, damn it, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to put it all down on pages. So that's what we did. We just put our hearts out on the pages, and it's a plea for all of you to join us and for us to join you We can save this country if we start acting now. We can do it. Now we have a new moderator.
Oh, wow, this is a lot of pressure. Hold on, let me get my notes out. No, I'm kidding. So I think one of the things that we've seen with BLM in particular is, and this was something that I think...
By the way, does anybody understand the title?
BLM HOA?
Do you get it? BLM Homeowners Association?
Not only do they buy mansions, but they also buy thoroughbred dogs. Have you heard of that story?
$40,000.
That's insane. It was insane when I saw this. I mean, talk about the fact that there's been no accountability against this organization that took millions of dollars from woke corporations, and then they spent time, these corporations, canceling anyone who would criticize BLM. And I think, Jason, you captured this so well in the Culture Killers documentary. It's an award-winning documentary. If you haven't seen it, please, please, please go to conservative.org, and also Prime Video, you can get it as well.
Amazon Prime and also Rumble.
Okay, so explain to us what you saw when you were talking to these individuals on the issue of BLM.
It was a little depressing because you looked at all of these throngs of people, Antifa, BLM, all of this video we scoured thousands of hours of video of these people. They're evil. They don't want you to have the life that you want to live as a Judeo-Christian values. They don't want you to have a nuclear family. They don't want kids to grow up with a mother and a father. They're opposed to these things. And I'm going to give you a new date that I think is pretty important. And maybe we should have a panel, and maybe it should be called the May 31st panel, just like we have a January 6th panel. Because May 31st was the day that these groups surrounded the White House.
Right.
And they burned the church across from the White House, and they tried tearing down the statues in Lafayette Park, and they wouldn't stop. They used violence. They tried crawling the fences of the White House and basically storming it. And we should have an investigation of the May 31st, because who are these? We need to round them up and send a lot of these people to jail.
So the May 31st Schlapp saga was that Matt Schlapp went undercover into Washington when that whole thing was going down. Give them the description of what you witnessed.
Well, I don't know if I'm supposed to say it, but I wasn't the impetus for it. We were actually in McLean, Virginia with Laura Ingraham and her family and other good friends and Cpac supporters, and we just couldn't believe what was happening. Once again, we're in a state of shock, and it was Laura who said, let's go down there and see this. It's not being reported accurately. By the way, she's one tough mother. And we all got dressed up in our camouflage gear, and back then, the masks, and so we're all doing masks and hats, and I was borrowing the football gear from our host's son, and my only problem is I had tasseled loafers on. So I got all ready, and my daughters looked at me and they're like, Dad, you're so gonna get hit. Look at your shoes. But we went down into it, and I have to say, all you could smell was drugs. There were no cops. It was complete pandemonium. It was like a scene from a movie, Escape from New York or one of these end of the world things. And it was like, you couldn't believe it. I saw them spray painting. They had cans of spray paint. Okay, spray paint's not the end of the world, but the desecration that was going on live, no cops, nobody's saying a word. The fires get started. More than one fire got started. They almost breached, think about this. You'll never read it. They almost breached the 18 acres of the White House. Dozens and dozens and dozens of cops and Secret Service agents were seriously injured. You'll never read or hear about that. The President of the United States, the leader of the free world, has to be taken to a bunker. For the first time in our history, outside of the Civil War, the President has to go into a bunker because other Americans, are trying to breach the duly elected president who they spent every moment of every day saying he wasn't duly elected. But you are an insurrectionist if you believe in voter ID. That's the insanity of what's going on.
I've got something to add.
Deal.
This is when you have to understand our history, the history of not only our nation, but of the modern world. The very first thing the Bolsheviks did, Lenin, Trotsky and Stalin, when they took power, was to go to the Russian Orthodox churches and desecrate them. Burn the icons, burn the altar. The very first thing Adolf Hitler did, and he did it on Kristallnacht, was to burn the synagogue, to burn the Torah, to destroy Jewish businesses all across Germany. You have to understand, those who desecrate are those who want to be your rulers, who want to be totalitarian dictators.
And it's a desecration of the family, it's a desecration of our history, it's a desecration of our church, it's a desecration of the individual. Jason, let me get to you real quick to mention about when you were talking about women's sports and the biological men who are going into these women's sports and the damage it's doing to young girls today.
Where do we draw the line? I mean, these people have now, the left, the woke mob, has now taken a position that anybody can be any gender that they want at any given time. You know, they can change their pronouns at any given time. And this is affecting, obviously, women's sports. We actually have people in the film that talk about their experiences not being able to say anything when you're on a team and this happens. And parents are so scared to say something because their kid could be expelled from school if they happen to take the wrong position. Think about, I don't know, I've been getting a lot of emails from people that work at these large corporations now, and they all put their pronouns in their email signatures. And I think to myself, I think, God, this guy doesn't seem like he's using pronouns, but he has to, because it's the pressure from the rest of the corporation that, oh my God, if I don't list this in my signature line, then I'll get the DEI police.
I'd like to declare something right now. My pronouns are USA. How about it, huh? We are so exhausted of this crap. Can't take it anymore. I want to say something real fast on this desecration in the book. And I know you believe this strongly as well, Jason. You know, what's the worst desecration possible than saying there's something wrong with that unborn child and it can't be accepted? You know, we have been, Cpac as an organization and all of you, we're all called racists and bigots, anti-Semites, homophobes, Islamophobes, all these things. It's just de rigueur. You turn on TV and it's like, Morning Joe basically said this was a convocation of fascists and racists. And think about that. This by the same people who think it's just fine that a majority of unborn black children are killed in the womb. They don't ever have a problem with that. These unborn children, many of, talk about the rainbow of colors. Not only do they not talk about it, they want to pay for it, they want to encourage it, they want as many of these children to not join the human family here in society as possible. How dare they with that hypocrisy? Why don't we do a better job of calling that out? That's racism.
Well, and I say, don't cave in on the pronoun situation. I remember I was talking to a dear friend of mine who she said, you know what, it's just the way the world is going. We are not part of this world. We have greater treasures waiting for us. And let me tell you something. If you cave in now, it will never stop. So I want to ask Steele, I know it's really easy to say, don't cave in, let's stand strong. But how do we do this? How do we get through this battle right now that we're living?
We don't care what other people think of us.
That's right.
When people disagree with us, it is a call for us to convert them. It is a call for us to tell them what we believe in, what we know is true. And I want to say a short word to all of you who are not religious, who consider yourself not religious. When you go through the catalog of basic values that make our country, liberty, human rights, human dignity, freedom, they all come out of the Judeo-Christian religion. So at least respect where they came from. because we are in this together, and there's no reason for those of you that do not go to church or whatever not to be arm in arm with those of us who proudly declare our faith.
Yep. And you know, just to add to that, some of the worst offenders out there are Republicans, lawmakers that are Republicans, that fire people on their staff because they say the wrong thing or did the wrong thing, and those aren't
Or did the right thing.
Right, they did the right thing, but they say that they did the wrong thing because the woke mob wants the pound of flesh, and these aren't the people that we need in our party. These are the rhinos that need to go.
Jason, if you were to do a culture, I don't want to say killers, but let's call it culture saviors,
Yeah.
how would that be? What would that documentary look like?
It would look like this room, basically. These are the people that know exactly what's going on out there, and we have to fight back. I mean, when you look at the things that Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg say on a daily basis, they're offensive, they're quite frankly racist, and they're incredibly ignorant. But they continue to put their butt in that seat every single day. I don't get it. They don't get canceled. They're after you. They're after all of you, and you gotta fight back. You gotta fight back and not give an inch.
Final thoughts, we'll go around. Matt, I'll start with you.
I would just like to point out something, since I've gotten some of these nasty phone calls over the course of the last 2 years. I'm kind of excited about what's sitting next to you on the table. What is that?
Well, this is, the film The Culture Killers, which was, of course, inspired by Deal and Matt's great book, is actually, believe it or not, doing pretty well on the film festival circuit. And
Can't believe it.
And in the most woke place of all, Los Angeles, California, there was a film festival that celebrated our documentary, The Culture Killers, for it took best documentary out of tens of thousands of entries. And so, Matt, well deserved, my friend. You can use it as a weapon next time you go into the BLM crowd.
That is.
Come on, everybody hold it. That's awesome.
All right, quick final thoughts. Deal?
My final thought is, look, you've got to confront these people who try to put you down, who try to cancel you, who try to dismiss you. You've got to have not only the willingness and the courage to respond, you have to have the arguments. So learn your history, learn the rootedness of what we believe in. Learn why it's true. There's nothing more powerful in the world than simple truth.
Amen.
Yeah.
Jason and Matt, last 30 seconds, go.
Yeah, this country was founded in 1776, not 1619.
Hey!
Mine's the simplest. You know, you have that TV clicker? It's got a button on it called power. Turn it off. Okay, just
And
turn it off.
I just want to say, when I go to the red carpet, I'll wear the Let's Go Brandon dress, okay, for the short movie, all right? All right, guys, you were all wonderful. Thank you so much.
탈모 샴푸, 머릿결은 포기해야 되나?
더나 플러스 모르나?
66가지 자연 유래 성분과 영양 성분으로 힘있는 모발의 세정력, 머릿결, 두피 건강까지 빠짐없이 다 잡았다. 자연을 담은 탈모 샴푸, 더나 플러스.
더나 플러스 탈모 샴푸 미주 출시 기념 특별 세일. 500ml 샴푸 2통과 앰플까지 89불. 가까운 판매처에서 만나세요.
잊지마! 공석 탈모엔 더 나나나.
수소수는 우리 체내의 활성산소를 줄여 항산화 및 노화 방지, 피부 미용, 독소 제거, 당뇨 및 면역력 개선 효과에 탁월합니다. 알카하이드로의 수소 알카리 이온수기는 1100ppb 이상 수소를 함유하는 대한민국 최초 수소수 생성 특허를 보유하고 있으며 알카리 이온수를 생성하는 대한민국 의료기기 인증 제품입니다. 수소수 정수기 알카하이드로 404-989-2000번 404-989-2000번.
저 안드레스 투자의 답을 드리겠습니다.
한미 애국교회 창립 2주년을 맞아 우리 가정은 물론 국가의 존립조차 위태롭게 만드는 성평등에 대한 모든 진실을 알리는 자리를 마련했습니다. 차세대를 겨냥한 정체성 혁명과 그 배후를 주제로 김태호 목사와 세라킴 사모가 평등법의 실체와 오해를 샅샅이 풀어드립니다. 행사는 8월 14일 주일 오후 3시 휴스턴 한인제일교회에서 열리며 유튜브로 생중계됩니다.
팬데믹 위기 속에서 인터넷 서비스 기업으로 성장한 bannerandprint.com.
각종 인쇄물, 배너, 스티커, 간판, 스니즈 가드까지 필요하신 모든 작업을 두고두고 마음에 드시게 해드립니다. bannerandprint.com.
전국 어디서든 웹사이트로 주문하시면 원하시는 디자인을 빠르게 출력해 신속하게 배송해 드립니다. bannerandprint.com 678-274-7275.
안녕하세요. 이상회계법인의 이상엽입니다. 30년 동안 아틀란타 한인사회에 봉사한 역사와 경험을 바탕으로 여러분들의 세무회계 관리와 재정 은퇴 계획을 상담해드리고 있습니다. 부자 되세요.
지금 제 목소리가 잘 들리시는지 모르겠습니다만은, 네. 일단은 지금 다음 연사가 저희가 릭 스캇.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from Florida, Senator Rick Scott.
Good morning. It's great to be here. What a great crowd. This is fun. Thanks for caring, by the way. Thanks for caring about this country. Thanks for caring about your families. Thanks for making the difference to make sure we change this country. The first thing I want to do is I want to thank Matt and Mercedes for inviting me and for all their hard work in putting this together. You're going to have some great speakers. I know President Trump's coming, I think, tomorrow, so that'll be fun. I'm head of the Senate committee, so I think J.D. Vance is coming, so I know he's going to do a great job. He'll be the next Republican senator, next senator from Ohio. And then the next speaker after me is somebody I've gotten to know over the last 3.5 years. I've been in the Senate 3.5 years, and I can tell you, your next speaker is one of the most principled individuals I know. He will always stand up for what he believes. Senator Ted Cruz will always do the right thing. Great nations don't automatically last forever. Writing about Rome, historian Will Durant said, "A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has first destroyed itself from within." Think about that. Great civilizations that have collapsed or been conquered by a foreign adversary were first hollowed out from the inside. We Americans were the most spoiled people on earth. We have been given such a great heritage, and we've taken it for granted. The founding fathers of our country, men like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, men who are now considered to be evil racists according to the top scholars in America's most elite universities. These men set us on a course for success the world has never before seen. We survived the War of 1812, the Civil War, World War I and II, Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War. But now today we face the greatest danger we have ever faced. The militant left wing in our country has become the enemy within. There you say, oh, that's pretty dramatic. You're calling them the enemy within. Yes, I am, and here's why. Let's do a quick situation report. The militant left has now seized control of our economy, our culture, and our country. When you turn on the news at night, do you even recognize the country you see? Are you worried for your family? Are you worried for your freedoms? The woke left now controls the Democrat Party, the entire federal government, the news media, academia, big tech, Hollywood, most corporate boardrooms, and now even some of our top military leaders. They are working hard to redefine our country, silence their opponents, and that means each of you. They're destroying about just everything they touch, and they've got their hands on everything. Here's the thing about what they're trying to destroy. American patriotism, border security, American history, gender, traditional morality, capitalism, fiscal responsibility, opportunity, rugged individualism, Judeo-Christian values, free speech, law enforcement, religious liberty, parental involvement in schools, and even private ownership of firearms. The woke left wants all of that gone. They want to end the American experiment. They want to replace freedom with their control. The elites in the government are telling us what we can and cannot believe, what we can think, and what we can do. They want to completely control our lives. Woke government-run schools, woke government-run healthcare, woke government-run media, woke government-run everything. In their new socialist order, everyone will obey, and no one will be allowed to complain. If you do speak up, boom, you're going to be canceled. Your views, if you don't conform with Big Tech, Fauci, or Neil Young, you're going to be taken off Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. The militant left in America are the modern-day version of book burners.
That's right.
Canceling, silencing, and banning from the internet is book burning. These are the most narrow-minded, intolerant people our country has ever seen. They are completely ignorant of both world history and American history. Socialism leads to two things: poverty and oppression. Socialism is not a new idea. It's one of the dumbest, oldest, and most discredited ideas of the 20th century that resulted in the deaths of 100 million people. Yet these Democrats, who have no idea how the real world works, are acting like they just invented socialism. The modern wacky left Democrat has never read George Orwell. They don't know they're making his predictions come true. Let's be clear. What the militant left is now proposing is not simply wrong, it is evil. It is evil, and the results are evil. Now, the Biden presidency, they brought us one new thing. They have successfully merged radical left-wing policies with complete gross incompetence. It's hurting people, it's hurting families, rip-roaring inflation, empty shelves, babies in the United States of America without formula. You can't make that happen. You can't believe that. Dangerous invasion of our borders, drugs and criminals marching in every day, escalating debt and spending, the inept withdrawal from Afghanistan, left-wing indoctrination of our children in our public schools, and murder all across this country. Criminals are not being prosecuted, but police are being executed. So it makes you think, is this the beginning of the end of America? It could be, but only if we allow it. Now here's the good news. The backlash is coming. The opposition is building. Americans in flyover country have had enough of this woke, elitist nonsense. Each of us want our freedom back. I believe it's time to rescue America. As the old saying goes, don't wait for the instructions from headquarters, just mount up and ride to the sound of the guns. It's time to take our country back. This fall, the American people are going to give a complete butt-kicking to the Democrats. But after we win, then what? That's what I came to talk to you about. If the Republicans return to Washington's business as usual, if we have no bigger plan than be a speed bump on the road to socialism, we don't deserve to govern. In Washington, we need new majorities in the House and the Senate, and we need a new plan. So in February, I released an 11-step plan, 11-point plan to rescue the country. It's got 128 very specific policy ideas. Look, I'm a business guy. I built businesses all my life. I believe the hour is late for this country, and if we don't have a plan, nothing's going to happen. We can't just say, oh gosh, we're going to do our best and hope it all works out. If you want to turn something around, you make a plan, you make big changes, and you do it today. Now, you can go to rescueamerica.com and you can read the entire plan. But let me just give you a few points. The plan calls for every child in every school to say the Pledge of Allegiance, stand for the anthem, and learn that America is the greatest country in this world. The plan calls for a complete end to racial politics. We're going to stop government from asking anybody what their race or skin color is. We're going to judge people based on their character. They're all made in the image of God, and judging a person on the color of their skin is immoral. The plan says we're going to treat socialism as a foreign adversary, and we're going to use all force to stop it from destroying this great country. The plan calls for a complete end to our relationship with communist China. We've got to extract ourselves from dependence on communist China and stop buying their products. When you see something that says made in China, send it back.
That's right. That's right.
They want to destroy us. We cannot rely on them for anything. Not pharmaceuticals, computer chips, TVs, clothing, cheap toys, any of their crap. Now, the next one's going to make me a little less popular in Washington. I think we ought to have term limits for politicians. Not just for politicians, but for government bureaucrats. We have to eliminate this permanent ruling class in Washington that thinks our government belongs to them. It doesn't. Now, here's some controversial things. Men are men. Women are women. Unborn babies are human beings. Science confirms that. The plan calls for a complete end to voter fraud and for protecting the integrity of each and every election. Look, the Democrats know they can't win any elections with their crazy woke ideas, so that what they want to do, they want to rig elections, institutionalize voter fraud. We're not going to allow it. We're going to declare a complete end to the foolish, soft-on-crime ideas that are destroying our country, our cities, and killing innocent Americans. If you don't prosecute, if you're a prosecutor and you don't prosecute, you're going to get fired.
That's right.
We're going to fund the police and teach our kids to respect the police because they're the good guys and the criminals, they're the bad guys. Finally, nations have borders. We're going to secure a border, build the damn wall, and when we finish it, we're going to name it after President Donald J. Trump. Now, it's got some other ideas, but you know what the critics in Washington say about my plan to rescue the country? The Democrats say, I'm not woke, I'm not. And they say I'm not serious, I am. They say I'm a racist in some way or the other because that's what they say about anything or anybody they disagree with. The Washington insiders, the woke media, the social squad, they roll their eyes when anyone reminds them that America is a great country full of great people. And we will not be stopped. In Washington, they tell us our plan won't work and nothing's going to change. Washington is full of do-nothing people who believe that no conservative can change ever. They're wrong. But nothing will change as long as they're in charge. And that's why we're going to get rid of them. Some Republicans complain about my plan. They mostly do it anonymously, but not completely. But the fun part is this plan is driving Joe Biden's nuts. He keeps lashing out at me. He did today again because I have the nerve to write a plan and to call him out for what he is. I regard this as a badge of honor. People in Washington, they all tiptoe around the truth. They're afraid to tell the truth. Joe Biden is incapacitated and incompetent and leading us through a recession. If he cared about the country, resign. We are not going to be intimidated by Biden, by establishment Republicans who don't want us to have a plan to change this country. We have no fear of standing up for what is right to rescue this country. That's the kind of old thing that got us where we are today. We don't control the House, the White House, or the Senate. I think it's time we each have to get serious. It's time to have a plan. It's time to execute a plan. God favors the bold. We are going to win this fight. Freedom is worth fighting for. America is worth fighting for. I hope you'll download the plan, read the plan, give me your ideas. We're going to continue to make changes. You're not going to agree with everything. That's okay. I want to make something happen. We're going to add things. In fact, we just added some. We just added a completely new section on taxation. We've had more than, I think, over 250,000 people read it. Thousands of people have given us their ideas. I think we need everybody's idea. So don't be timid. This is the time to be bold. Our nation's future can be bright, but we need to have a plan to get this country back. But before you read it, it's going to make some people mad. It's good. It's not for the faint of heart. It's going to trigger some people. I think that's good. It's going to strike heart and fear of some Republicans that don't want change. If it doesn't scare the people in Washington, we didn't aim high enough. We've got to make change. The fight to rescue this country from socialism is our fight. The fight for freedom is the fight of our lifetime. We have got to stand up and not be controlled by the Democrats, by government, by the elites, by anybody. We must and we will prevail. We've got to start in November. Thank you, and God bless you in this great country. Have a great day.
탈모 샴푸. 머릿결은 포기해야 되나?
더나 플러스 모르나?
66가지 자연 유래 성분과 영양 성분으로 힘있는 모발의 세정력, 머릿결, 두피 건강까지 빠짐없이 다 잡았다. 자연을 담은 탈모 샴푸 더나 플러스.
더나 플러스 탈모 샴푸 미주 출시 기념 특별 세일. 500ml 샴푸 2통과 앰플까지 89불. 가까운 판매처에서 만나세요.
잊지마 공석 탈모엔 더 나나나.
수소수는 우리 체내의 활성산소를 줄여 항산화 및 노화 방지, 피부 미용, 독소 제거, 당뇨 및 면역력 개선 효과에 탁월합니다. 알카하이드로의 수소 알카리 이온수기는 1100ppb 이상 수소를 함유하는 대한민국 최초 수소수 생성 특허를 보유하고 있으며 알카리 이온수를 생성하는 대한민국 의료기기 인증 제품입니다. 수소수 정수기 알카하이드로 404-989-2000번 404-989-2000번.
Joe Andres.
I just welcomed my second child and my first daughter, Louise Marie Farmer. That aside, if I was there, I would be preaching to you all about the need for us to stop giving our money to companies that hate us, which is why I am so proud to co-found and to launch Glorify. You guys, Glorify is going to be big. It's going to be providing financial services, credit cards, and much, much more. So to learn more, head to glorify.com and sign up for early access. I'll catch you guys next time.
네, 이제 다음 들으실 순서가 테드 크루즈의
Ladies and gentlemen, from the great state of Texas, please welcome Senator Ted Cruz.
Bless the great state of Texas. Welcome to the land of the free and the home of the brave. You know, I got to say, I love Cpac being in Texas. Reminds me of an old line that you never ask someone if they're from Texas. Because if they are, they'll tell you. And if they're not, you don't want to embarrass them. As I look around this room of patriots, as I look around and I see American flags and I see Gadsden flags and I see the Gonzales battle flag, come and take it. It occurs to me that the Biden FBI believes this is a room of dangerous radicals. And you know what? They're right. There is nothing more dangerous to a bunch of power-hungry, abusive, totalitarian nimwits than a free and empowered and energized American people taking our country back. I'm here today with two simple messages that together are a word of hope and encouragement to everyone here. The first, America is in crisis.
That's right.
We know this. We look at what's happening in Washington. The President of the United States shakes hands with the empty air. That ain't normal. If you look at what's happening in Washington, everything is going wrong. We got out of control inflation. The cost of everything is going through the roof. The cost of food, through the roof. The cost of electricity, through the roof. The cost of health care, through the roof. The cost of gasoline, through the roof. It's so bad, Antifa can't afford bricks. It is so bad, Eric Swalwell can't afford Chinese dinners. It is so bad. It is so bad that AOC can't afford fake handcuffs. We have crime skyrocketing across the country, murder rates going up, carjacking rates going up. We have chaos at the southern border, the worst illegal immigration we have seen in 62 years. And as bad as the domestic and economic policy has been, the foreign policy is even worse. Every single region on earth has gotten worse. Every enemy of America is stronger. It's so bad, we sent Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan and they were happy. By the way, in a truly surreal moment, a Chinese state-owned newspaper said that when Pelosi came, the Chinese should shoot her plane down. The White House press secretary was asked, what does the White House think about this? And I kid you not, their answer was, we have no position on that. Like, what in the hell is wrong with you? Look, I'm no fan of Pelosi, but the only answer to an enemy of America threatening to murder the Speaker of the House of the United States is that would be an act of war, and the result would be devastating consequences. And the weakness and appeasement that comes from these cheese-eating surrender monkeys is making America and the entire world far less safe.
That's right.
Now, some of y'all might be thinking, you know, Ted, you said you were going to encourage us. You really suck at this. But I told you I had 2 points. Here's the second one. Revival is coming. And I believe that with all my heart. You know, across American history, politics has always had a natural pendulum sense to it. One party gets in power, they go too far one direction, and the American people pull it back. Every terrible idea that comes out of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, part of me grieves, but part of me celebrates. Because it's opening people's eyes, and it is accelerating people coming back. We are going to see in November not just a red wave, but a tsunami sweeping this country. People understand this is idiocy. All right, think about the idiotic mask rules that the Democrats tried to foist on us. Remember the rules when you walked into a restaurant. If you walk into a restaurant, you must wear a mask until you sit down. And then when you sit down, you can take your mask off. And remember, this is because of science. And actually, I got a theory. The COVID virus reacts to altitude. So at 6 feet, it is utterly deadly. At 3 feet, it is completely harmless, and it is a tonic for the bones. By the way, that's why Fauci's safe. He's only 5 feet tall. But people see this. People understand this, and they understand it doesn't make sense. You know, as I look out here, one of the things I love to see is all the young people here at Cpac. All the young people suffering under communist woke professors. I talked recently with a college kid at one of these schools who said at each class, before any student speaks, they're required to introduce themselves, say their name, and say, "My pronouns are." Well, my name is Ted Cruz, and my pronouns are kiss my ass. What I got to tell you is, look, people know this. College kids know this. They may be afraid to say it. But if you see someone with a beard and chest hair and a voice like Barry White, that's a dude. Like, we know that. Leah Thomas, I'm sorry. Leah Thomas looks like Michael Phelps. And people across the country, across the world are like, that don't make any sense. And it is powerful how people's eyes are opening up. It is powerful. Look, I'm focused right now on three things. Number one, standing up and fighting every dumbass idea that comes out of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. In the Senate every day, I represent 30 million Texans, and my job, it's like the old Roman Coliseum, where you slam on a breastplate and you grab a battle axe and you go fight the barbarians. And as they say in the military world, it is a target-rich environment. Number two, I am spending almost every waking moment crisscrossing this country campaigning for candidates for the Senate, candidates for the House, because we're going to retake our country. I am on the road nonstop, number one, to win back the House and Senate, but number two, to actually elect real conservatives with backbone and principle, so that when we have a majority, we do something with it. And I'm going to make a prediction right now, which is come November, South Texas is turning red. We're going to elect not one, not two, but 3 Republicans from South Texas, all Hispanic women. And I can't wait to see Adam Schiff. By the way, that's a sentence that's never before been uttered in the English language. I can't wait to see Adam Schiff. And Nancy Pelosi talking to 3 Hispanic women from the Rio Grande Valley explaining now illegal immigration is not a problem. Oh, really? And then number 3, I'm spending my time on winning hearts and minds all across this country. Look, Republicans, we spend too much time preaching to the choir. We spend too much time talking to the same 2.6 million people watching Fox News. And God love, the choir needs preaching. But we also need to be talking to young people and Hispanics and African Americans and suburban moms. We need to be talking about the blessings of liberty. Some of y'all know I do every week a podcast called Verdict with Ted Cruz. We launched it 2.5 years ago. It became the #1 ranked podcast in the world. We've had over 40 million downloads every week. We beat CNN's morning show. So I want to ask y'all to do something. Take out your cell phone. Take out your cell phone and text the word verdict to 24005. Let me give you that again. The number is 24005. Text the word verdict. You'll get a link back to subscribe to the podcast. And come share it with your friends. Share the blessings of liberty, because every one of us, all of us have a platform. All of us have the ability to speak to our friends, to our colleagues, to our families, to our neighbors, to be evangelists for liberty, to be happy warriors. And I got to tell you, I'm looking forward in January of next year. I'm going to be walking along the hallway in the U.S. Capitol, and I'm going to bump into a little man carrying a screwdriver, coming to change the sign on Nancy Pelosi's door. And Nancy is going to get on her broom. All right, that's not right. That's not fair. Nancy is going to get on her private jet, the USS Broom. She's going to fly back to San Francisco. And actually, for her sake, I really hope her husband doesn't pick her up from the airport. And Chuck Schumer's going to get on the Acela and he's going to head back to Manhattan. And then we're going to tell Joe Biden it's 2025. And he'll just wander back to Delaware. We are on the cusp of something extraordinary in this country. Millions of Americans are waking up, and each of you are the vanguard. You are the dangerous radicals, like the men who signed the Declaration of Independence, like the framers, like those who died at the Alamo. You are the courageous heroes fighting for liberty in our country, and I'm here to tell you, together, we are going to restore that shining city on a hill that is the United States of America. Thank you, and God bless you.
지금까지 보신 내용이 이제 릭 스캇 의원하고 테드 크루즈 의원들 얘기를 들으셨고요. 릭 스캇 의원은 이제 주로 미국을 다시 어떻게 회복시킬 것인가에 대한 계획들을 얘기를 했고, 테드 크루즈 의원은 본인이 어떤 것에 시간을 더 많이 쓰겠다, 집중하겠다, 뭐 세 가지 이런 얘기들을 했는데, 자세한 이야기들은 나중에 저희가 newsandpost.com 저희 웹사이트에 기사를 통해서 소개를 해드리도록 하겠습니다. 그리고 저희가 지금은 이제 잠깐 점심 식사 시간이어서 쉬었다가요, 생중계를 좀 멈췄다가 오후에 다시 한 1시간 반 정도 뒤에 다시 방송을 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 오늘 오후에 있는 내용은요, 주로 지금 뭐 제이디 벤스라든가 마조리 테일러 그린, 그다음에 뭐 잭 포소비엑, 그리고 앤디 빅스, 로버트 말론은 mRNA 창시자죠. 이런 분들도 나오고, 그다음에 케빈 스티트 오클라호마 주지사가 이끄는 여러 사람들이 나와서 종교의 자유에 대한 그런 토론회가 열리게 되고요. 그리고 이제 켄 팩스턴 텍사스주 법무장관의 이야기까지 저희가 지금 진행을 해드리겠습니다. 오후 생중계에도 기대해 주시고, 뭐 좀 저희가 동시 통역을 해드리지 못하는 점을 좀 죄송스럽게 생각합니다만은, 나중에 좀 더 발전하면은 얼마든지 또 좋은 서비스를 해드릴 수 있는 기회도 더 오겠죠. 죄송합니다. 일단은 여기서 지금 생중계는 멈추고요. 오후 시간에 다시 여러분들 찾아뵙도록 하겠습니다. 중부 시간으로 약 한 2시, 동부 시간으로는 오후 3시쯤에 여러분들 좀 찾아뵙도록 그렇게 하겠습니다.